All right, it is time to search for some grace and find some love. All right, it's a wonderful day for that. I could definitely use some of that today for sure. All right, today the lesson is don't worry about all the steps. Begin. The verse comes from Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 through 7. It says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. I always enjoy how these three topics really play into each other in an interesting kind of triangle, right? Because wisdom, usually given from love and grace, feeds into peace, and peace continues to foster love and grace. And it's just an interesting kind of circle/triangle that everything kind of loops around, which is cool. Now, this is one of my favorite verses personally before I get into this, because prayer is a very, very strong thing. It is where we can reach out for the love and grace, and something that I've started doing personally is trying to make sure when I pray that I pray um, as much as I can and as strongly as I can, and to follow how to prayer specifically more in the Bible, which is great. It's been wonderful for my prayer life. All right, so have you ever run a marathon? Me neither. I have some friends who have done it, and I've learned a lot about life from what they experienced. They say that they feel like their bodies are going to shut down at multiple points in the race, so they keep moving when they stop by tables with water or orange slices. Some say they get a little delusional at certain points and sometimes feel like an unexplainable sense of euphoria. All the friends I've asked say they couldn't think too far ahead, so when they felt like they were falling apart. In other words, they couldn't think about mile 22 when they were on mile 21 because it was just too overwhelming. They had to focus on putting one foot in front of the other and repeating this until they finally crossed the finish line. I think the same is true for most of us when we start a new project or pivot to a new direction in our lives. We can do our best to plan and train, but once we're in the race, all we can do is be present in the moment. We won't know what needs to happen at mile 22 until we get there. Some people delight in this, but most spend too much energy feeling anxious about a mile marker they haven't arrived at yet. Does that sound like you? Usually the things we worry about the most don't happen anyway. We fear there will be a disaster only to find balloons when we arrive. Take heart, if we're diligent and thoughtful each step of the way, we don't have to fret over contingencies down the road. Don't worry about what may or may not happen. Stick by Jesus and trust He will work it all out in the end. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, I am one who will never be interested in running a marathon. Um, I feel like I can pretty much run around all day if I have a objective, but just getting out and running is just not something that's my brain says, yes, let's go do this. So this is a good example of where learning from others' examples is a really cool thing. Hearing this about running, though, people are delusional and they feel like their bodies are going to shut down, yet they keep pushing through just to be able to say they ran a marathon. Seems strange to me, but everybody has their own likes and dislikes. I'm sure there's plenty of people who can look at some of the things I do and say, "How in the world can you do that?" Um, Actually, I had somebody mention to me the other day they have no idea how I could just sit here and seemingly talk to myself as I do these things and then record it and let people watch it and see what happens. But, you know, I digress. Looking at this as far as a spiritual journey goes, I think it can be very daunting for new people of faith. They get handed a Bible. Lord help them if it's like King James or something that feels like they're reading a foreign language. I remember back when I was 11, like feeling that way. Um, but it just seems like so much. There's members of church that were going there for 50 plus years, and they're meeting me and asking me about how much of the Bible I've read. At 11, I don't know how to answer that. I'm like, a couple pages. No, though. I've read the Bible front to back maybe total of 5, 6 times. Still don't have full understanding of it by far. I pick up more stuff every time I read. I think in the terms of love and grace, though, not worrying about all the steps and just taking one thing at a time is extremely helpful. I'm sure when the runners get to the table with the water or the orange slices, they feel extremely thankful. They're probably praying, please don't let me collapse by the time I get to the next table. Like, let me at least get to that next table. I think it's interesting that, a lot of people do plan and train for these things. I've known a few people who have trained up on runs. And I think it's usually like at least a 3 or 4 month training process. Most spend too much energy feeling anxious about a mile marker they haven't yet arrived at. Does that sound like you? Yeah, I can definitely say that sounds like me. Hmm. We fear there will be disaster only to find balloons when we arrive. I'm very bad about getting in the mindset of just planning for a worst case scenario. So I would say yes. That definitely does sound like me. Hmm. If we're diligent and thoughtful each step of the way, we don't have to fret over contingencies down the road. Don't worry about what may or may not happen. Stick by Jesus and trust He will work it all out in the end. That is something I can definitely aspire to do. I'd say I do that about 50 to 60% of the time. Maybe actually closer to 70. But it's to those times where I wonder hmm, what the path is. But it's time to give myself some grace on that, and it's time to give myself some love on that. I think moving forward, I need to focus on just taking the minor steps. Walk God's path. Don't lose faith. Don't worry. Don't have fear. Just know that no matter what the situation is, God is going to take care of me. And just trust in that. And I think doing that each step as I take the next one should be a whole lot easier. Now, the question for this one for the day is, what's your next step and when will you take it? And for me, that is really leaning into this channel. I've already gotten a lot of people who have helped me in this. And this is just really a way to kind of keep myself accountable on what I'm doing. But at the same time, it's also really helpful for myself whenever I have people to interact with and really kind of talk back and forth with. Once I talk back and forth with people, it becomes a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Fulfilling. I can hear, where people have done certain things or where they've overcome things and ultimately where God has helped them through that moment. And that's a very inspiring thing for me. So my next step is going to be really pouring as many resources as I can into this channel. As you guys can probably tell, I have thumbnails now. But when am I going to take it? I'm going to take that today. And I don't need to plan it out. I just need to do it. Regardless, this has already helped keep me accountable to doing this. It's already served its goal, and it's going to continue serving that goal. What God wants to bring to this for us, God's going to bring. I don't have to worry about that. So there's no hesitation. It's one foot in front of the other, full steam ahead, with full confidence. What's your guys' next step? Would love to be able to hear it in the comments. I'd love to be able to support you through it. Feel free to leave below. Or you can always email me, talk to me directly. Your choice. Have a wonderful rest of your day.